All right, there we go. Hello everyone, how's it going? Team here, and this is BxJS Weekly, episode 113, bringing you all the best JavaScript news of the week in a podcast form. And yeah, it's been a while since I've done one of those actually. Somehow it didn't work out in the past weeks, but I'm finally back, hopefully with a regular schedule. And we do have quite a few things to talk about today, with most of them actually being releases. There's surprisingly lots of them today. All right, let's get started with the podcast itself, as usual. The first section of the week is getting started. We got quite a few articles here that are pretty good, starting with storage for web from the web.dev website that is maintained by the Chrome dev team, essentially, or I guess Chrome advocates, maybe. I'm not exactly sure what their exact relation is, but this is the Google guys, basically. Let's put it this way. And they tend to have a really good articles, and this one is no exception. So this one is sort of an outline of the different options for storing data in the browser and when to choose which, right? So the local storage, the IndexedDB, the storage, cache storage API, service workers, and so on and so forth. So I guess if you are just getting started and you're not familiar with some of this or all of this really, because there's quite a few of them, and I don't think I was familiar with all myself, for example. This is a really good starting point, or even, sort of a quick guide to figure out which API do you want to use in your next project. So definitely do check this one out. Next thing we got here is state management with Unstated Next from the LogRocket blog. This is a pretty nice tutorial on Unstated Next. If you never heard about it, Unstated was one of the probably simplest options to maintain state in a small to medium size React applications. The Unstated one, or I guess original version, was built around the classes, so it's like the really old API and everything. And Unstated Next is the evolution of that introduces the hooks API. So if you have a React project where you want to have some sort of a global state and don't want to drag in the Redux or anything super complex, do check this one out. Unstated Next is a really good library. It's very easy to use, and this tutorial basically covers everything you need to know about it, how to set it up, how to pass the state around, how to use the basic store, and so on and so forth. So it's very straightforward, very simple. The tutorial is well written, so if that sounds interesting, do check this one out. Okay, next article we got here is logical assignment from the V8 dev team. And yeah, it's just a deep dive into the logical assignment operators. How do they work? When do you need them? And what exactly happens? It's not extremely lengthy. And again, this is not extremely complicated topic. It is a feature that's going to be added soon-ish to all the modern browsers and Node.js. So yeah, it's, it works exactly as you expect it to work, with a logical operator and then assignment. But if you never heard about them, do check this one out. It's a pretty good outline of what they do and when to use them. Next thing we got here is Deno version 1.0. What do you need to know? So Deno 1.0 is releasing soon-ish. We're actually going to be talking a bit more about that in the releases section, because there's already a release candidate available. And this article once more iterates over, well, what is Deno, what kind of differences it has from Node.js, what do you need to know about it, and how do you get started? So if you're interested in Deno and want to sort of have all the information in one place, then this article is a pretty good starting point. So yeah. Hey, Andre, welcome to the stream. Thanks for sharing wonderful information as usual. Well, more than welcome. Anyway, continuing, we got my React components rendered twice and drive me crazy. The title is a bit confusing, but this is a write-up that explains the React strict mode that was a recent-ish addition to React, that basically in development forces your component to randomly re-render to allow you to catch bugs, right? I think we already talked about it at some point when it was originally presented. I believe it was a blog post by Dan Abramov, maybe. But anyway, so this talks about the strict mode and why exactly does it makes your components triggered twice, and why it only happens in development mode. So if you're not familiar with it, do check it out. It's not extremely long write-up, but it does show you what exactly, how exactly it works and what you should keep in mind if you are using it. Worth noting, the React.strict mode is now enabled by default in Create React app. So if you scaffold a new Create React app starting one of the latest version, basically, it will be in strict mode which means that if your components basically do something wrong and break on rendering multiple times, you will start seeing bugs in your app. And this is exactly why this mode exists, basically. Hey Moritz, welcome to the stream. For whatever reason, the Restream chat doesn't seem to actually recognize the what do you call them? Emoji is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, it's a bit weird. Anyway, last article we got here for today in the Getting Started section is OpenCV directly in the browser, WebAssembly and WebWorker. So this is a tutorial on how to set up OpenCV in the browser from scratch by literally compiling OpenCV into WebAssembly on your own using mscripton. Not too basic, but not extremely advanced. Again, all the commands are here for you, so it's like pretty nice deep dive essentially that shows you how to compile the OpenCV into the WebAssembly library and then how to load and use it in your JavaScript and then offload it into the worker so that your main thread is not actually locked because, well, OpenCV is not exactly a cheap thing to do, right? If that sounds interesting, do check it out. I mean, the example is relatively straightforward, but it's a really cool project nonetheless to get started with OpenCV. All right, that is it for getting started sections. Now we're coming to the articles in news. We got 4 of them here today, and if you hear any weird sounds, it's just my cat going crazy in the background, so just a warning. The first article we got here today is rendering 1 million data points with D3 and WebGL. So this is, on one hand, it's sort of a tutorial for D3.js that just talks about how exactly would you work with a pretty large data set, right? On the other hand, it sort of dives into D3.js rendering modes because it turns out that D3.js recently added the canvas rendering mode, which I didn't know about. And also there is a WebGL rendering mode which allows you to render like tons of data points without losing any FPS. So if you didn't know, the D3 by default renders as SVG, which works fine if you have charts that are, under 1,000 data points or so. The canvas mode apparently works better if you have like under 10,000 data points or so. It's going to be smooth 60 FPS. And then WebGL is what the author here uses to render literally millions of data points with various transformations and tooltips and whatever. It's pretty crazy. So the obviously, the stuff like streaming data set is included, then applying functions, doing annotations, all that kind of stuff. It's a really cool write-up. There's a bunch of third-party libraries that basically help with all of that. So if that sounds interesting, do check it out. It's a really good article. Let me have a look at the chat. Hey Bip, welcome to the stream. Can I ask very basic questions? Sure, go ahead and ask away. I will try my best to answer them. Meanwhile, we got the next article from the, again, web.dev team, Web Vitals. So this is sort of an introduction of new set of essential metrics for the healthy websites from their perspective of the Google development team. And this is the things that are, well, partially some of them are integrated into things like Lighthouse or Chrome DevTools or, PageSpeed Insights already, and then they actually released the Web Vitals Chrome extension that allows you to have a deeper look at those specific core Web Vitals. So they define 3 of them here, which is the largest contentful paint, first input delay, and cumulative layout shifts, which all 3 of those are really important. But, up until now, it was not that easy to quantify them essentially. And this is sort of what they try to address here with this essential Web Vitals, right? So if that sounds interesting, if you basically care about performance of your website, if you care about metrics, definitely check this one out. It's really, really cool. Like it's great to have that. I mean, it's a separate extension for now, but somehow I'm guessing they're going to end up integrating that into either DevTools or the Lighthouse itself as a separate tab or maybe as additional metrics. It does make sense to put them into the Lighthouse. I guess this is probably just an experiment to see how that works out. But it's a really neat initiative, let's put it this way. Okay, let me have a look. I'm learning about React. It mentions virtual DOM. Yes, virtual DOM is kind of the main thing of React. There should be a pretty good explanation in their documentation on what it is and how it works. Okay, continuing, we got common mistakes with React testing library. This is a pretty good write-up from Mr. Kenzie Dodds, who's also one of the creators and maintainers of the React testing library. And it talks about the common mistakes you see or people make when they just get started with the React testing library, or maybe when they were working with it and didn't read the docs carefully enough. Hey, Smaller Brute, welcome to the stream. So there's stuff like using wrapper instead of destructuring the actually what it returns, using cleanup, which is no longer needed. I believe that was done in some sort of one of the updates that basically removed the need to do this. They did have, like, you basically had to do this in one of the first versions. Then they got rid of that. And then there's stuff like, using screen for accessibility, using wrong assertions. And yeah, there's a bunch of other things basically. So if you are using React testing library and you are, well, testing your React components, right? And you're not so sure about the best practices here, then this is sort of a collection of mistakes rather than best practices, which is a pretty good write-up. Hey people, welcome to the stream. Code review will probably happen on Wednesday. We'll see how that goes, but yeah. Hey Gregors, welcome to the stream. All right, last article we got here for today is rebuilding our tech stack for new Facebook com. So let me just do it this way because it's a bit easier to read. This is a write-up from the Facebook team that essentially talks about the relaunch, or I guess rework of the Facebook. I think they've rolled out the new version to everyone now. I'm not that frequently on Facebook, but anyway. So they have this new version that is built on React and GraphQL and uses a lot of modern tech. And this article essentially talks about how they build it, why, like what kind of technical choices did they make, and what kind of things did they do to make it smaller, faster, and so on and so forth. One of the interesting things I found here right at the beginning, for example, is the fact that they actually put engineering experience in service of user experience. So they focused on the engineering experience first, and then through that engineering experience, they've driven engineers to deliver a good user experience, which is very interesting approach that actually makes a whole lot of sense when you think about that. But I don't know if I've ever seen that elsewhere, but it's just, an interesting bit here. And then there's, talks about like atomic CSS that allowed them to reduce the homepage size by 80%, which is just bonkers. And then, collocating styles, using SVGs for, faster rendering, sample bundle time handling, bundle splitting, so that you have to load only whatever you use in the specific pages, because some pages are bigger, some are smaller. You no need to load everything at once, and so on and so forth. There's like a bunch of different things in here. So if you are interested in essentially how the new version of Facebook was built, I would absolutely recommend reading through this article. It's very educating, and there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. All right. That is it for articles and news. Now we got some tips, tricks, and bit-sized awesomeness. The first one being there was the Github Satellite 2020, which was a completely virtual event, as you would imagine in this time. And it introduced a bunch of, pretty damn cool things that they will be adding to GitHub soon-ish. So my favorite two are code spaces. So essentially, this is a VS Code that is integrated into your GitHub. And you can start working on your repository by just clicking a button right in your browser, which is honestly, like, I might just have a laptop that has a browser at this point and nothing else if this works out, because it seems like they give you like a full-on environment where you can work on whatever you want. And in the code spaces preview page, they basically say, okay, you can work on, where is it? There's like, first of all, it supports VS Code extensions. So it seems like it's literally VS Code running in browser. And second of all, it's basically working with just about any language you can imagine. So Node, Rust, TypeScript. I think there was like a bunch of other available in beta, and they will be obviously expanding that, probably based on Docker or something. But this just looks amazing. So like literally one button in GitHub and your environment is ready to, do a pull request, edit, fix a bug. This thing might simplify development a ton. Like, this is a really exciting GitHub addition, I guess, at least for me. So I'm pretty interested to see how that develops. And the second one is something we actually already seen, but they're basically releasing it into beta for public repositories soon, is the discussion. So the sort of I think they've already previewed them a few months ago, and it was just basically a place where you could talk, ask questions, and so on and so forth. Something that is really missing from the GitHub repos, because people tend to open issues and just ask questions, which I guess it's fine, but it's better to have a separate place where you can actually do something like this. And this is exactly what it adds. So it's sort of a forum where you can communicate, maybe do blog posts and announcements and whatever, which seems extremely convenient. So I'm quite excited about that as well. There's quite a few projects that I would love to add this to. So yeah, let's see how that develops. There's a bunch of other things if you're interested. Check out the post here. So there's like security scanning for your code and repos for like tokens and stuff, and a bunch of other things basically. Okay. Next thing we got here is introducing GitHub issues integration for VS Code. So VS Code is adding integrated integrated GitHub issues display right in your code, so that you would actually be able to see what exactly is happening, why is this code changed, and then it's going to be basically linking directly to the GitHub issues, so you can actually see what the issue is right from the VS Code, which is if you are working on the GitHub, and I guess this is probably related to them running the code spaces because it's going to be VS Code, right? If you are running this VS Code on a GitHub thing, then, well, this is going to be extremely convenient. You just like hover over the number and you get a nice inline display of the issue itself, which looks pretty damn cool. So if you're interested, do check it out. I think it's just an extension now, but it's probably going to be merged into the VS Code itself, because this is kind of the way they've been developing it. All right. Next thing we got here is the Gatsby now has native TypeScript support. That's right. You can just install Gatsby and then write your pages in TSX, and they will be compiled by default without any additional things, basically, which is kind of great. As I've seen people still complain that like you cannot write Gatsby config in TypeScript out of the box, so you still have to like precompile it. But yeah, I mean, they're getting there. It seems like they have planned to do that, to basically eventually do that as well, now configuring and, well, doing everything else in TypeScript too. But it's pretty good to see the TypeScript sort of integrating into more and more things. I'm guessing it has a bright future. All right, continuing, we got what the heck is React Fast Refresh? A nice little explainer of what the React Fast Refresh is, which is, a successor of React Hot Loader, which was there for ages since, I don't know, I think basically the first version of React, I think. And why was it built and how is it different from the Hot Loader itself? So if you never heard about it, apologies. If you never heard about it, do check it out. It's a really good write-up that explains the differences. What I found interesting is that actually React, so one of the cool things about the fast refresh is that it maintains your state, right? So if you write the React app and then you hot reload one React component, it won't lose the current state, but only for function components and hooks. So this is one of the caveats, which is kind of interesting. So it does not preserve the state for class components, which I guess also kind of shows where React is moving. And, as a person who likes hooks a lot more than the classes, I support that. But I know that some people are not really happy about that development. So we'll see how that goes. It also, like, one of the coolest things is that it also works with React Native. So you can actually get the same hot reloading with all the components and state persistence in React Native, which is kind of bonkers. Do you know the release date for Microsoft? When will the VSL 2? Yes, so they said it will be May 12th, I think. So it's the Windows 10 2.04 update release date. I think it was May 12th or something. Now it's May 28th. That doesn't seem correct. I believe last time I've read it was May 12th, but version blah blah blah. Okay, that seems like some spammy bollocks. Chip is coming. I remember reading somewhere that it's gonna be May 12th. And Windows Subsystem for Linux release date. No. May. No, not arrive around the same time as Windows 10. Blah, blah. Okay. Yes, previously rumored to be. Oh, okay. So they actually Oh, they delayed it. I was hoping it's going to be released basically next week, but no, it seems like they've actually delayed it until end of May. God damn it. Here I was hoping I could migrate to VSL2 already. Well, apparently it's May 28th now, so yeah, that's a bit of a disappointment. Anyway, let's continue with the podcast. The next section we got here is the releases, and first thing being here is Deno version 1.0 release candidate 1. So if you wanted to jump on the Deno train, if you wanted to try out the first basically release candidate for it, I'm guessing there won't be too many changes from this to the actual 1.0, probably just some bug fixes. This is your chance. Just go ahead, grab it and play around with it and try it out. It's a very solid product. Again, you know, it's not compatible with Node.js, so don't expect the whole JavaScript ecosystem to work there out of the box. There is some compat layers, but majority of libs do not really work as you would expect. Nonetheless, Deno is a very exciting piece of tech, and I'm very interested to see how all of that develops and where it will go in the next couple of years. Yeah, I guess we already did a couple of streams on it, but if you guys want more streams on Deno, do let me know, because I'm totally open to that, and I would be interested to see what can we build with it. Okay, next release we got here is V8 version 8.3 that brings mostly stuff like performance improvements and minor fixes. There's also some additional V8 API changes if you are interested, so nothing too significant to highlight basically. But you know, if you're interested in specific, do check it out. One of the, I think, biggest highlights in this case is the allowance for bigger WebAssembly memories. So the VASM is now allowed to allocate up to 4 GB in size of RAM, which is just bonkers. And I guess you can basically run video games on that now without too many issues. But there we go. Let's see how that develops. Next release we got here is Node.js version 14.2 that introduces assert.callTracker function that is basically an experimental API that allows you to track and verify the number of times a function was called. Seems helpful for debugging and tests. I honestly don't know if I would basically use something like that. Typically you have Jest and stuff, you know, for figuring out if a function was called or not, but maybe you know why you need that, so do check this one out. The next release is Firefox version 76 that essentially comes with a better, a lot more improved lockwise password manager that they introduced before. So it now like notifies you about the breaches. It prompts you to update the passwords if the passwords was known to be in one of the compromised lists, essentially. Also generates secure complex passwords for new accounts if you want to, and so on and so forth. It's kind of great that they've, you know, putting so much effort in the password manager that is default in the browser, but I don't know. I still feel like, you know, to be competitive with existing password manager solutions, you have to provide not just like one password manager that works in a browser, but also the stuff that works on a phone or on a tablet or wherever else, right? Because I'm not using my passwords only in a browser, unfortunately, but yeah. Anyway, it's not concerned with the topic. Did you change a browser from Firefox to Edge? Yes, I did change from Firefox to Edge. I'm still missing a few things in Edge. Like the current problem is that it doesn't sync extensions, open tabs, and history. They are bringing that soon-ish. I'm guessing they're going to push it together with the 2.04 update. But it's been an incredible experience. Like, it's really good. It's like Firefox has a few minor annoyances that just don't work out for me, and Edge just works really well. It's basically a lighter, faster Chrome that has a bunch of neat features, like, you know, the collections, for example, that are extremely helpful, and the reader mode. I think, I mean, I already used it today. Where's the Facebook article was available in reader mode. So you have this reader mode that is extremely handy, and okay, and I don't usually read it in such big font, but, you know, it's kind of removes all the clutter and you can just read it as a tech article, which is just freaking great. So yes, I've moved to Edge and I've never been happier about my browser. Anyway, continuing, we got VS Code version 1.45 April release that brings in a bunch of changes. Like, I think the notable ones for me are number one, the fact that they now allow you to style semantic tokens. So prior to this, you basically needed to create a theme that had a specific token styling integrated, and if you were a user, you couldn't actually do anything about that. Now they give you literally a way in settings to just change specific tokens in your code, which is pretty cool. I still don't think I'm going to do this myself, but it's really cool to have an option to do that, basically. Another cool highlight is that it now basically the remote development is updated to support the WSL2. So it now is fully compatible with WSL2, which again brings us closer to it. But it's just, why did they have to delay it? God damn it. I just so want, just give us a way to fast track it. I don't want to install the whole like preview, you know, the, what was it called? The Windows preview thing. I just want WSL preview, and that will be enough for me. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, if you're interested, do check out the full log here. There's quite a bit of things as usual. All right, next thing we got here is ESLint version 7. So the Node v8 support is now dropped. Be careful about that. If you're still on Node v8, I don't know what are you doing. You should upgrade now because it's EOL in December 2019. Like, you should be already using something newer. But yeah. And there's a bunch of like core rule changes and improved developer experience and a new ESLint class for people who are building plugins essentially. So yeah, it seems like a solid release. All right, and the last thing we got here for today in the releases is Jest 26 with a bunch of changes. Again, dropping Node 8 support as a lot of other libraries, essentially reducing the size of Jest down by 4 megabytes, which is quite nice. And my favorite thing is probably the native support for ES modules. So it's still experimental, so it might break. It's not quite there yet, but it is finally landed. So I think one of my gripes was when I tried to use the Node modules, the Node with ES modules, is the fact that I couldn't use half of my tools because they was like, hey, Jest doesn't actually understand ES modules out of the box. And there's no easy way to add that. And I was like, a bunch of tools basically were not compatible with ES modules. And it's really cool to see that they are finally adding that support. I'm guessing migrating the whole Node ecosystem to ES modules is probably going to take 2 to 4 years, maybe to 5 years. It's not going to be an easy process. And yeah, seems like it's going to take a long of time to actually get there. Maybe Deno will be faster to overtake Node. I'm actually quite curious to see what will actually happen. But yeah. Okay, that is it for the releases. Now we are coming to the libraries and demos. We do have quite a few here, but not too many this time around. So let us check out them right now. So the first one we got here is lightproxy. It's a web debugging proxy with one-click setup on Windows and macOS. So it's essentially, yeah, it's literally the web debugging proxy, right? And it's built on Electron and works pretty damn straightforward. So if you are looking for a replacement for something like, what was the name of it? Charles, I think, is the most popular one, right? So do check this one out. Maybe this is exactly what you wanted. Seems like a handy project. Next thing we got here is aviondb, a decentralized database with Mongo-like developer interface. And yeah, it's just, you know, a decentralized database that tries to provide an interface that is similar-ish to Mongo. Uses IPFS as the backend for storing the data. So this is sort of how it gets the decentralization aspect. But yeah, it looks pretty interesting. So if you were looking for a decentralized database, then do check this one out. It looks like a decent project. Next thing we got here is face login website. This is from one of our viewers. So this is a basic demo that shows you how you can use TensorFlow to authenticate yourself using your face through the webcam. Obvious caveats apply basically because it's TensorFlow and machine learning and it's a face recognition. It's not exactly a secure way of logging in, but as a, you know, silly thing to just play around with, as yeah, with including Terminator scanning theme. It's a nice project, I guess, to learn how to do something like this with TensorFlow, Node.js, and Express. So if that sounds interesting, do check it out. Next thing we got here is React Flow. React library for rendering interactive node-based graphs. So stuff like this looks really neat, actually. The API are extremely easy to use. So if you are in need of building complex graphs like this, right, and there's like ability to do custom nodes and everything, it's yeah, it actually seems really cool. So if you need to build something like this in React, do check this one out. It actually looks pretty damn good, and I wish it existed a few years ago when I worked on a project that needed something like this. Anyway, continuing, we got Deep Waters, an easy to compose functional validation system for JavaScript. As it says, it's a validation, like object validation system that basically allows you to create validation rules using functions and functional composition. So really straightforward, really simple. I mean, I guess, still composition is cool, but without the pipeline operator, using compose usually feels clunky and is a lot harder to read than other existing ways of composing things like this, essentially. But nonetheless, it's a pretty nice one. Next thing we got here is react-uploady, modern file uploading component and hooks for React. It's literally just a nice component for uploading files to the server. You can either use it as just a core logic or core with UI if you want to. There's like a bunch of different versions and packages that support a variety of things and allow you to do things like retries or chunk sender, so on and so forth. So, if you're working with uploads and was looking for something complex, then do check this one out. It actually looks pretty good. Next thing we got here is React Notion, a fast React renderer for Notion pages. Apparently, people are nowadays using Notion as a content management system for like blogs, docs, personal site, whatever. And this is basically a plugin that allows you to render a Notion page into the web page, just in React, which looks okay, I guess. So if you're using Notion as a CMS and you wanted a way to render your pages in React somehow, then do check this one out. It actually looks pretty damn good. All right. Next thing we got here is selecto.js, a component that allows you to select elements and drag area using mouse or touch, which basically looks like this. So you can literally just drag and select a bunch of squares. Very straightforward, very simple. The cool bit is that it actually has code for, so you can use it in vanilla JavaScript, you can use it in React, Preact, Angular, Vue, Lit, and Svelte. So it basically has packages for literally every possible popular framework. So if you were looking for a select package to, drag and select things, do check this one out. It actually looks really, really good and has a ton of examples and libraries for every possible framework. And even, combine it with movable if you want to, which is kind of great. So there we go. Next thing we got here is Web Vitals extensions. So this is what I was talking about before during the Vitals article that we talked about, right? So this is the dedicated extension for Chrome that allows you to see this largest contentful pane, first input delay, and cumulative layout shifts that you can basically quantify once loading the page. Seems like, it really feels like this should be part of DevTools. But I'm guessing this is sort of an experiment and they are gonna eventually merge it either with the Lighthouse or with the DevTools themselves. Yes, it does look very nice, and I'm guessing this is this is gonna be very handy if you care about the user experience and sort of the performance of your website. It's also very amusing that they load the Reddit here in the largest contentful pane. It's just like for almost 5 seconds. This is just bonkers. So yeah, there you go. If you are curious, do check it out. It seems extremely helpful. All right, next thing we got here is React Virtual, hooks for virtualizing scrollable elements in React. So already had the virtual components that basically allow you to do virtualized lists in React using the higher order components, right? And this is the implementation of basically the same thing, but using hooks, which seems to be pretty damn nice. So if you are looking for something like this, do check this one out. Looks pretty good. I would be interested to see the comparison between this and, the React Virtualized, I believe it was called, and React Window as well, and which one is, simpler, faster, better, size and stuff. But, you can do it yourself if you want to. But nonetheless, it's always nice to have more options. So this is definitely pretty interesting. Okay. Next thing we got here is Dumbass. Yes, this is the best possible name for yet another UI library. So it's simple tool that allows you to make UIs in kind of Preact-ish way, I guess. So sort of allows you to use the template literals to write your HTML that is kind of a mix of, I guess, React with Vue, I would put it this way. But yeah, it looks fine. So it's like, yeah, it looks very dumb and very straightforward, and maybe this is exactly what you were looking for. The name is probably my favorite part about it. So there you go. If you are interested, do check this one out. Okay, next thing we got here is Puppet Scraper. Scraping library using Puppeteer that basically simplifies a lot of things that you would have to do manually when scraping stuff with Puppeteer. Instead, you would just launch the scraper and then give it a URL and then just evaluate a function with whatever, document, query selector or whatever, and then just return the data from it. And that's it. I mean, I'm not saying that it's extremely complicated to do that with the Puppeteer itself, but it does take some time to set this up. So having something that basically sets this up for you is quite nice. So if you are doing a lot of scraping with Puppeteer, do check this one out. Maybe this will simplify some things for you. All right. And the last thing we got here is vue-ssr-jit, just-in-time compilation for server-side rendering Vue components. This is a pretty interesting approach. So the idea here is that this plugin, it basically takes the Vue components and Vue pages that you have and tries to determine what components could be rendered or should be rendered on server and which ones could be delayed to the client to make this both server and client rendering as fast as possible. Which, I mean, it's exactly what the just-in-time compilation does, but I think it's a really interesting approach. And I wonder what kind of performance differences, like, the quantifiable performance differences are there when using this plugin, because I don't think the repo actually includes any sort of a benchmark. Oh, no, it does have benchmarks. Okay, I somehow missed it. Big table. Yeah, there you go. So there are benchmarks, but I would love to see some sort of a summary for that, because running them myself is not something I would do because I'm not a Vue person, but I would be very interested to see how much gain can you achieve when using a technique like this, and whether something like this could be applied to the React. All right, that's actually it for libs and demos, and this is it for today's podcast. So as usual, you can find all the links on GitHub or on bxjs.dev once it updates. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to throw them into the chat right now. If not, we can just wrap it up here. As usual, thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support. If you want to talk about any of that, we got a Discord server. You can join it and chat about JavaScript and video games sometimes. You can follow me on Twitter for updates whenever I do them. There is a VOD for all of this will be available on Twitch and Mixer and YouTube immediately after stream as usual. And yeah, I guess that's basically it from my side. Thank you, Moritz. My pleasure doing all of that. I mean, this, exactly why I do that, because it's fun. All right, I'll give you a couple more minutes to think if you have any questions or suggestions, or maybe libraries you want to share. And if not, then essentially, yeah, so let me think. So I wanted to do the VSL2 stream this week, but since it's been delayed, I'm guessing we're going to do the code reviews on Wednesday then. And then figure out how we proceed from there on. So what is actually 28th is like, okay, so it's literally like a month. God damn it. I wanted my VSL2. No. Anyway, doesn't seem like we have any more questions or suggestions. So thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I see you next time.